Report to this computer. All right. So what we've got, uh, this is kind of the finished version of what I've been building up over here for you to see. This is going to take a moment. I don't know why it takes so long when I'm connected to Zoom and this stuff. Normally this is like very fast. So I feel like the experience when we have over here is a little bit different. There's going to be a lot that's going on in here. My goal is to get you guys situated with a script to make the ball, like a script for the physics of the ball, a script for the game manager, and a script for maybe a canvas to help controlling moving from one spot to the X. Because if you think about this, the stuff that we need to do here to make this putt, like you want to hit the ball, but you want to be able to control the direction that you're hitting it. So how do we actually do that, right? So we can think of having some node that we can kind of spin around. It'll be nice to have that node and to have that camera being able to follow and being able to hit in the direction of the camera, and then let the physics of the terrain win. Other things that would be nice. It would be nice to have a ball that slows down and rolls as we encounter various physics. We didn't quite get to this at the end of last class, but there is a document, that number 3 from last, that if you want to sample, I put the functions inside of there that you could sample from the sand and sample from the other. So in the Godot script, that you could apply basically physics based off of where you are on the texture. Like that's straightforward enough to do. But doing this actually putting stuff is a little bit different. So here we go. My 3D script is basically going to look like this. To see this thing run, I've got this. My goal for this description, that I still have to work on that. But my goal is to give myself a situation. I don't know if you can completely see this over here. But I've got something where I can kind of control with arrows. I can control the direction that I'm facing, and I've got my little golf ball in front of me, yeah? I can press the space bar, and that ball gets some impulse. And in theory, this ball is going to come to a stop on its own. So that's maybe a little bit too, like in theory, you're going to have some level of control associated with this. But the left and the right control is something that's going to need to be done. Now, once this thing has completely come to a stop, hopefully what we're going to see here, I don't know if you saw it or not. Did it do it already or no? Did it fade out and come back or no? Did you not do that? Why are you not stopped? There should be something. I built it in. Of course, now that like I'm trying to demo, this is not. The idea was that I had a script that fades out and then comes back in. I think right now it's playing it at the wrong spot, which is a little bit annoying. So I'm going to just restart this. And you can see that after 3 seconds of the ball not moving, so it fell down, 3 seconds, it moves out, and then it fades in and comes back. Okay, and I'll repeat that over here. So I did the fade in and fade out. I have some movement so you can actually see this in this case. Comes in, once the ball has come to a stop for 3 seconds, fades out, comes back in. The idea is that in that moment when it's completely faded out, you could respawn the ball or respawn the camera in a different spot. Or you could do something in this time once that ball is stopped to like move over to that other place. Maybe you have the camera transition to it. There are lots of different things that you can do. But once that ball is stopped, we're going to need to go to that new place. We can give it another impulse to move on, do another impulse, move on, blah, blah, blah. So question is, how do we do that? So here we go, rock and roll. I'm going to take this game over here, and I'm going to just kind of go right back from scratch. So what I say with this is the first step is to build a base world for yourself. So I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to go back into my editor. I'm going to quit to the project list, and I am going to go to the loader. Come on, let me just reload this page. I'm going to clear my persistent data, and I'm going to load in the very first version of this. So let me preload my file for us here. And let's go right back. So this is going to be number 101. I have putting 101. Start the Godot editor. And we can call this preload. So my suggestion for a place to start with all of this in the putting recipe system is just like give yourself a camera, light, environment, a scene. You guys have done this, right? Like we've done this. I have a base world over here. In my base world, I have a ball. So I've made this ball, and I have certain things like, come on. I have my ground mesh instance 3D camera. Here's my golf ball. The golf ball inherits from a rigid body, and my ground is inheriting from static body. So this is a static body 3D, and my golf ball is a rigid body 3D. Okay. It's a base suggestion. Having things like directional light, world environment, and camera 3D are also really helpful for you here. If I go ahead and actually run the game at this point has it so that when I apply a space bar, I move the ball. So my goal is apply the space bar, move the ball. So the question is, how do I do that? And if we take a look at these scripts, I have a couple scripts that you can do to see this. So actually another thing that we should be in the habit of, I don't know if this is helpful for me to go through and demo this. Are you guys, does this feel helpful or no? Like, okay. In my scripts, just good practice over here is having a scripts folder for this. I should probably have a scenes folder as well. But in the scripts folder, I've got my ball script and I've got my game manager script. Do you remember the game manager script? Where was the last time you saw a game manager script? Do you remember this at all? Yeah, in the maze. So like this is going to be a part of our life. I know you remember that, but okay, here we go. So rocking and rolling. So if I take a look at these scripts, let me go into here, my ball script. The ball script, I have two things. All this ball does is it has a linear damping and an angular damping associated with this thing. This is basically adding in friction and some sort of resistance so that as this ball moves along, it slows down as opposed to it, right? So this ball has physics process. You'll recall that once things have physics process, they do the physics, right? Like they interact with the world, they have the collisions, they have the resistances, they have the forces, all those other functions become available. Well, other built-in functions, linear damp and angular damp, get introduced as well. And those will provide angular damping and linear damping as this thing goes forward to give that sort of appearance that it's not actually going full on straight ahead. Or no, it is going full on straight ahead, that it's like being resisted. And then what I also have over here, I don't actually use my HUD in this case, so we can probably safely delete this. But I've got my ball. I'm really getting in the habit of exporting things for myself, right? So I'm saying ball is rigid body 3D. I'm remembering to assign this. So I've taken the script, I've assigned it to my node 3D, and then I assign it over here. I'll just kind of zoom in for you guys. Oops, that's so over here in my inspector, I have my game manager. I've actually assigned that golf ball inside of here so that I have access to that. So that's very helpful, very useful. My magnifier. Input, is action just pressed? So in order to get this new is action just pressed, how did I get this put thing? Because you can probably guess that put is not a built-in component of these, yes? How do I get put? How did I get that? Guess where you are. That's it. So you guys are that. You're in it, right? I added an input mapping and I chose what was going to be responsible for actually doing this putting. And then I have this sort of like central thing over here, the var put vector. I've defined it ahead of time. So I just had -1, 0, -1. The middle variable, the middle parameter of the vector 3 is the y. So I don't want it going in the y direction. I'm just going to give it 1 in the x negative, 1 in the z negative. And that's kind of why when I don't know if you saw this thing, it kind of went off. So actually, I don't think I did run this thing. Like, let me run it this time. Did I run it? So when I press my space bar, boom, he goes off at an angle. The reason I have this as a variable over here, though, is because presumably I'm going to want to extract this information and I'm going to extract what's forward or what's in front of me, pull that in and use that direction and scale that direction by some amount. And that's going to be the strength and the direction of this actual put. So the put is being initiated in the game manager. That's a sort of critical thing that I'm thinking about. I'm initiating that put in the game manager. Ask me questions or give me a thought. Yes.
You go with the put the game manager on the
Yeah, so getting this game, how to get the game manager. So I've got my game manager script, right? I wrote my game manager script. I put it in a scripts folder. I dragged and dropped the game manager script onto my Node 3D up here. And then when I click on my Node 3D in the inspector, near the top, the the .gd script is going to have options for me to assign elements to. And this is here because he was exported. The ball is the local name, rigid body 3D is the type. So if I were to actually click on this, I get a preview of the available options. And you're going to see here, the only thing that I can click on in my preview is this ball because that's the only rigid body 3D in my scene over here. So I've defined the type with colon. I've defined the name, and then ball can have a central impulse applied to it. Great questions. More thoughts, more questions. This will be recorded so you can watch it as well, and we'll post it up there. Okay, so the next thing, where do we go from here? I'm going to reload this page, and I'm going to clear my persistent data. This is working a little bit. My workflow is a little bit better today than it was last time. Now I am going to go to Putting 102, and Putting 102. We can just install this in preload. Putting 102. So here's my game manager script for Putting 102, right? And here's my ball script in game manager script. So my game manager script, I don't necessarily need this thing for the HUD. So what I'm going to do in the second one is I'm going to introduce this notion that we have started to encounter a lot. We have it a lot in web, like where you want a button not to be pressable just yet, right? Like you enter in some state and you don't actually want to be able to putt. While that ball is moving, after I putt that ball, while it's still rolling, I don't want to be able to, I don't want to putt this thing again. You want to disable putting for some amount of time. And typically this is accomplished by just keeping track of some sort of Boolean variable. So I've got some Boolean variable that says, hey, I'm either allowed to putt or I'm not allowed to putt. And the game is going to interact with that variable in such a way that enables or disables this. So I've got my ready to putt over here. I'm keeping him false. I've got my ball because I have this. I know I can assign him in the inspector. And what we've got over here is this ball.connect. So this thing is new, this ball.connect. And this is something for anybody who's been here. Does somebody recognize this? Because I know a couple of you guys have done this. What am I doing here? Jasper, tell me what I'm doing there. I'm connecting a signal. So signals are kind of weird things, but they're kind of like inter-thing communication, inter-script communication, if you will. It's a little telephone call, to use a very non-technical term here. But this is saying like, hey, I've got the pager, I'm listening. This ball basically is connecting. I'm connecting this ball ready, a signal that comes out of this object called ball ready. When that signal is emit from this particular object, run this function. Okay, so the idea is that that ball object can emit something known as a signal. It's going to send a message to the system. And this right now on line 8 over here, the game manager is establishing itself as a listener to that ball as it emits that signal. Ask me questions about that. Does that kind of sort of make sense? Give me an analogy. Somebody make an analogy. Any analogy or better, kind of like a network analogy? I don't know. I'm saying that. Thanks. The tower that can receive the signal, sure. Yeah. He's the catcher, right? It's the wide receiver that says, I'm going to receive the football. Ball is my Josh Allen over here. and I'm saying, hey, Josh Allen, me, myself, Shakir, uh, when I receive this message, I am going to run this ball is ready method. And so ball is ready method is something that I had to set down here. And when I got the signal that said the ball is ready, I set my own variable ready to putt. And now I ask the question, hey, if I'm actually ready to putt, then I putt, right? So I'm not just putting willy-nilly. I'm only putting when I've established that Boolean variable that says, hey, we are actually ready to putt. Then I just go ahead and do my central impulse. Similarly, in my ball over here, I'm going to say signal up at the top. So the ball has to say, I've got a signal. The ball has his own ready to putt business that he's going to use to keep track of whether or not he's moving. That's probably like a better version of this. I've got some cooling off duration. So basically the idea is that after that ball stops moving, after that ball has come to some critical speed, when the speed of the ball crosses below some thresholds, I'm going to start counting time. And I'm going to count time. And once time aggregates, so here we go, right? So if my speed is critically low, I'm cranking up the time. If this time becomes greater than that amount of time, and I'm also not ready to putt, I'm going to say, hey, we are ready to putt, and I'm going to emit the signal. Who gets the signal? The game manager gets the signal because he's registered for it, right? So they lined up at the starting line together. This object emits a signal to another object, and that other object receives the signal because that object has registered itself to receive the signal. So it's a two-way street, right? Stefan Diggs has to say, I'm ready to catch the ball. And Josh Allen says, I'm going to throw this ball to you. And they are both in agreement that this is going to happen. And it happens every time. Okay, so what does this look like? So here we go. I'm going to give him a run. And I don't know what I'm doing. So I give him a run. I press this thing. Then went off at that -1, 0, -1. And you can see it's really starting to slow down. The time is a little bit slower because this is running in the web editor, but we've got 1, 2, 3, and now I can press this again and I get another impulse. To get a sense of what this is looking like, I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to smash on the keyboard for a second. Boom, 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 boom. So for those first 3 seconds, it wasn't able to do it, but now I'm not continuing. You can see this ball is slowing down. I'm not still putting. He's come to a stop. He's had to stop for basically 3 seconds before that next impulse was applied to that. And that was working because inside of the physics of the ball, I said, hey, am I at a stop? And if I'm at a stop for a sufficient amount of time, I'm going to tell the person who's actually listening to me up here, right? So this guy, let's put it this way. My game manager is saying, if somebody just said putt, if I'm ready to putt, do this. But as soon as we putt, I'm no longer ready to putt, right? As soon as this ball has been putt, I'm not allowing additional putts until I receive the message from the ball. And that happened after 3 seconds. And then I say I'm ready to putt again. So that's the basic logic. Anna, please. Say that again.
Take the ball every single time.
What do you mean every single time?
Like, realistically, when you golf, obviously, I missed the ball like 5 times.
So we're in this case, I'm being guaranteed to take the ball.
Yes.
Yes.
It's like random, believe it or not.
So this is a really good question, right? And so once we get these mechanics come together, this is where you could have like in your HUD, your controller scene or something like that. Maybe you have like something that kind of like floats around, and then you have like a mouse and you try to click on a spot. Like you can capture input in such a way that maybe doesn't necessarily guarantee where you're gonna hit this stuff. Absolutely. We could add some randomization. In this case, this is 100% of the time saying this impulse will be applied to that guy. This is a guaranteed hit. But I agree. I am also someone who frequently misses the ball when plays golf. So yes.
In the code for the blog, you type stop underscore time. What is that?
Great question. So the question is, in my ball, I had stopped underscore time. So what I've done up here is this is my ball code. My ball is keeping track of his own amount of time. This is basically, so let me step back for 1 second and talk about the motivation behind this. The motivation behind this is that when the ball stops moving, we kind of sit and wait for a couple seconds and then move, and then we allow ourselves to putt again. So it's not this like continuous live. There's a an experience built into it of you see your ball come to a stop. We wait for 3 seconds and then we enable you to start putting again. So the logic is that once that ball is stopped, it's a little bit hard to tell like exactly when that happens, but if the speed is sufficiently low, right? So if my speed is very, very low, I start counting up the amount of time that it's been going slowly, so that after 3 seconds of like super duper slow, I say, okay, we can putt again. And I'm specifically looking for this to kind of give a metric to like saying, okay, yeah, that's in place. I don't know, like quantifying that, like, yeah, that was a good hit thing.
So it's just like it's off and then it waits 3 seconds. Down.
Yeah, it stops and it waits 3 seconds for you to like get set up for the next putt. Yeah. And I'm accumulating time for 3 seconds over here. And critically, when this ball is rolling, that time goes right back to zero, right? So if we're above speed, we're not considered spot stop. And if ready to putt was true, like if for whatever reason this thing thought it was ready to putt, I really don't need ready to putt inside of here. I think I wound up getting rid of it in the next version. Yeah, Alex. So that's a great question. Linear velocity is the vector. It's the vector 3 of this ball's motion. So linear velocity is not something that I defined. This was something that was defined in rigid body. It's a great question. Linear velocity was part of rigid body. And because it's a vector 3, it has its movements in all these different directions. And so what we basically do is we create the normalized magnitude of that vector with the dot length. So this is straight out of physics, right? Without doing actual physics. It says that this is the velocity in 3 dimensions. The dot length is that velocity converted to a speed in 1 inch. Great question. More stuff. Feelings and thoughts? Okay, cool. I love the questions. I really do. Okay, tearing right along. So, the next idea behind this was that what I can do is I can kind of, let's go back into here. Let me go back into my scripts. Where's my script? So my ball script doesn't really change at all. My ball script is not going to change. My game manager script, I am going to put some new things inside of here. So I'm going to make some mods. And here we go. So now I've got a new thing. The next stage is to take our game manager over here and to introduce this notion of looking for the left keys and the right keys, right? So I can look for the left and I can look for the right. So I was looking for a putt to be pressed, but also I can say left and right. Now, what you guys do could be totally different from this. I'm not saying that this is the only way to approach this. This is saying this is a way to approach this, but aiming node. Okay, so aiming node. Oh, I really should have put more into here. Did I download the third one? Let me go back and let's see if I actually did this. Let me reload. And pull in this third version of it. Here we go. Start. It works much better than the last time. Or does it? Okay, so what I've done this time, and I want you to take a look at this. So over here, when you see the little circle, when you see this circle, this is a rigid body 3D, right? That's a mesh instance 3D. This is a collision shape. That's directional light. That's an environment. This thing, what's the circle? Node 3D. So this is just sort of an empty level of the tree. But inside of that node 3D, I have my camera 3D. And I've kind of changed around the whole business of this. So this node 3D, or this aiming node, is centered just over here. I don't know that that's actually the best location for it. Really, I should have centered it at the spot of the golf ball. That would have been better. But here I've got my aiming node. And the purpose of this aiming node is to have that script attached to it that I just showed you guys. So I'm going to have this script over here where I can rotate my aiming node left and right. And that's going to allow me to do something like this. So if I take this script and I start pressing left and right, or if you capture any other form of user input, like I can make this guy start looking in different directions, right? And then, because this was his own node 3D, if I extract the transform.basis, like our first scripts that we were working with over here, if I extract the basis of these things, I can actually identify which direction is forward and use that as the direction that I'm going to choose to putt. So what does this look like? It looks like this guy right here. So in 103, what did I do? Did I not do that? That's my game manager 3. Oh, okay, never mind. For 103, I didn't apply that just yet. I just said, hey, I'm gonna apply my central impulse of the putt vector. Here I just said it's a -1. I did a lot of different things with these and sure. All right. Tearing right along. Let's go back. I'm gonna clear my persistent data. And now for number 4, oops, sorry. I'm gonna go back here. So clearing the data, that's a great question. Clearing the data removes all the other projects from the Godot web editor. So if I were to start the Godot editor, all of these projects that are in my web editor are actually gone. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I have very specific examples that I wanted to load in, and I didn't want to be confused. I just wanted to know that I had one that worked. On a different computer, I wouldn't be doing this. This is just a web editor feature kind of thing. So this is just allowing me to pull files off of my personal computer right here, and I can go into 104. I have a very clear example made for myself. So where was I? So we said made the ball behave and communicate, right? So you have some signals. We connected to the signals. We've got an aiming system inside of here. We added rotation, and here, this is basically it. Like if the action was pressed for putting, then we can apply an impulse that corresponds to that putt that was requested. That's what I've got right here. We can install this guy. Look at it. And give it a run. So here I go. I'm gonna kind of change this around. And I press hit. And now this ball is moving in the direction that I intended it to hit. So however you do these sorts of things, you can look at the transform.basis. There are lots of ways that you can do this, but I'm looking at the transform.basis and I'm using that transform as the sort of ideation, as the idea of this. One of the crazy things about this, though, is that
mini golf courses or any golf course, they tend to have to be really straight. So when you start spawning in different locations, are you always gonna wanna spawn facing the direction that you did when you previously? No, exactly. So you're gonna kind of need to think about where you are, where this ball has reached versus where the hole is, or like, do you wanna have it go, like, what is that direction? Yeah, do you know, like? Yeah, so the hole could definitely have a sort of signal of saying like, this is the spot, like, in theory, if you mark the hole on there. You could have that position with 3D space saying like, this is where it should be, or at least in the X and Y directions, this is what it should be. As I'm working with this, I'm realizing that the scope of like multiple holes, like, we're not thinking of 9 at all. Like, if you can get a couple, that would be great, but if you get one, I think one is gonna. The more I sort of get it, but workup is great.
Dances for pool or billiards.
Oh, you could totally do, yeah, if you wanted to do a billiards, that could be interesting to take on this, but I kind of want that convolution, I would want like maybe a little bit of a more people this way. This is absolutely, yeah, this would be a billiard. I can see this in billiard. For sure. Yeah, I am not, I am 100% not like. Yeah. Oh.
Love that. All right. So how do we do that? 104 basically was I had a ball script over here. My cooling off duration, much of that is just the same. And really what I'm doing now is I'm looking at the basis, right? So I'm looking at I'm getting my transform.basis. Do you remember transform.basis? Where did we talk about transform.basis? One of these labs. Flying machines, absolutely, yeah. So if you're not really sure about this guy, you can go back and look at the flying machine. The transform.basis is that fundamental position. It has things, so this basis has things like a .x, a .y, and a .z. And each of these x, y, and z's in the basis is a vector of 3, because that's telling like where the x direction is facing, but where this object's x direction faces, where this object's y-axis faces, and where this object's z-axis faces. So where this thing fits into 3D space. It's not a single value. That .x is actually a vector. It could be dot whatever. It might be something totally different. It might not be .x based off of the way you position everything, right? Like you may wind up aligning this thing on .c. I'm not really sure. Radio. So from here, I kind of make a big abrupt jump. And this is where I say fading in and out. So the fading in and out side of this guy, let's choose the file. And I'm going to go over here. So for this one, clear the persistent data or not. I'm gonna clear the persistent data just because it always loads it into the same folder and I don't want to overlap. So here we go. We're gonna choose the file. I'm gonna get number 5. Not gonna clear. I'm gonna run this thing. So for my final example, what I did here is I made a canvas layer. Do you remember canvas layers? Our friends, the canvas layers. So my goal with this canvas layer is this is going to be the thing that I almost use as like the scene that closes it and opens it back up. So you don't need to have a canvas layer for this. You will need to have probably a canvas layer for your HUD and probably for figuring out like how strong you're going to hit it and interacting with that. Like that will be part of this, right? But what I'm doing here is I asked myself a question last night. How is it that we want to move from this spot to the next spot? And I think that if you just like abruptly move the position of the, that node, that feels weird. That was my thought. Like, so if you close it, like if you fade to black, do the move and then fade to back in front of you, you can respawn effectively in a new position without feeling like that was a bug. So whatever the spawn is, you're going to need to figure out some way to make it less abrupt than just quick movement. And for me, that was putting a canvas on here, and I made a rectangle that I'm going to basically fade in and out of complete black. So fade to black, fade in. So here we go. What does this look like? So my canvas layer, we're going to take a look in the 2D over here. This is literally a rectangle. Okay, it's literally a rectangle. I set the color to be black, and I set the alpha to be 1 or 255 here. The way I'm going to fade out is I'm going to set this to 0 and fade this way, and then fade it back to pull it in. So I'm going to fade the alpha, which is the transparency. The alpha is the transparency. I'm going to be doing transparency fading to actually make this seem like it's appearing and disappearing. When I say transparency fading, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Do you have an okay? I'm getting some nods here. So basically, this is black, and it's going to fade in and out. So what this looks like is basically the following. Let's go over here. Did I do what? So I made a canvas layer. So I up in my so in my node 3D, I added a child node that was a canvas layer. That's not showing up where canvas layer. So Canvasca. So I made my canvas layer, and then within the canvas layer, I added a color rect. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I just didn't know what.
Yeah, and there's no reason why this can't be its own separate scene. Many of these can't be their own scenes. That might be helpful management as well. Another thing. So let's talk about scripts. Don't save. So here we go. So I've got my game manager script. I'm gonna have my canvas script, and I'm gonna have my ball script. So my ball script, doing the same thing. When he comes to a stop, he signals to the game manager, I have stopped. My game manager doesn't have a HUD inside of there yet, but it does receive the message that the ball is stopped. When it receives the message that the ball is stopped, it's saying handle, stop, and make ready. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fade that canvas out. In theory, right here, I'm going to respawn in a new location. So I'm going to move that guy, and then I'm going to fade it in, and I'm going to say that I'm ready to pop. I've got my moving over here. So this looks like a lot, but we've been through there. This looks like a lot, but I would argue that this is sort of a place to start, right? So there's a lot of this that looks like a place to start. And really what I want you to see here is that if looking at this seems like way too much, hopefully this document right here and the saved notes of what we've gone through can be like, okay, this doesn't happen all at once. It just does not happen all at once. It happens in pieces. My canvas. Ooh, my computer is going slow too. This is going to be dangerous. So my canvas. You're going to notice right here, this says fader canvas. Okay. The thing that you choose to call it is actually up to you. But let's take a look at my Canvas script right here. So I've made a script for my Canvas, and I had to play around with setting this visible, and I had to I set the alpha to 0 when it was ready. Like the modulate properties of this thing were just driving me bananas. So I wound up setting them I hard set them in ready. Anyway, I've added a color rect as an export. By adding this color rect as an export, where does this color rect show up? Where does he become available? In the inspector. In the inspector, I can go and I can assign this thing. So this guy is going to persist inside of here. So if it's not working, chances are the first place to look is to say, did you actually assign it? Right? Like ask yourself, did I assign it in the inspector? I have a duration. Perhaps you could change this around to various different things. There's a new setting inside of here. There's a new word, something called tween, and then await. So a tween is kind of like a lerp, but it's an animation basically. It's a linearly interpolated animation of a parameter between two values. So here I'm setting the self-modulate A, which is basically that alpha channel from the fading in is modulating that alpha from 0.0 to a 1.0 over the duration of the 1 second set by this guy. And similarly, the fade out is modulating that alpha value of 0.0 to 1.0. So I create the tween. The tween is effectively an animation. Tween means motion between or animate between. So it animates between. It creates this like linearly interpolated thing, and then you can tell it to play. Basically, when you say this command, this is going to begin that animation. But when you await tween.finished, you effectively say, wait until this tween is done playing out, and then allow this thing to move on. Okay, so it stops the execution of this thing, because normally this is a non-blocking method call. I don't know, you guys have seen non-blocking method calls before, like typically like when you assign on quick listener, sometimes in web we see these things where the code just wants to move on. If the code just wants to move, this code is going to want to move on. This is not, line 23 is not going to block the execution of my code. However, when I await tween.finished, it will block the execution of my code, and this thing will return when it's actually done. So what am I going to do? So I have to be able to call fade in and fade out. But if I were to just use a canvas layer over here, if I were to use a canvas layer, I'm not going to be able to call fade in and fade out, because fade in and fade out are not properties of a canvas layer. They are not part of the canvas layer device, right? So what I had to do in order to make this work is, in my canvas script, I gave this a class name. This is a critical bit of salt and pepper. This is the secret sauce that makes it work. This is the thing that you ask your grandma, how did you make it? I can't make it taste that way. She put in class name fader canvas. That's what they're doing. It's that special ingredient that allows this thing to become different. It allows you to have an instance of this. So here, because this is now a fader canvas, I'm allowed to call these methods from this other class. I wasn't allowed to call them if it was a canvas layer. I was just allowed to treat it like it was a canvas layer. But if it is a class, I'm allowed to call those submethods. So now, when I get this message that we initiated earlier on, when that ball is stopped, I'm going to say, okay, great. I'm going to await for this thing to fade out. I'm going to move my guy. I'm going to respawn. I'm going to fade back in, and I'm going to say I'm ready to putt. And so it's going to be some sequence like this. This is how much ingredients I'm willing to give you guys. There's still a lot more to this, but I think we need like a certain amount of scaffolding. This is really good. There's a lot of work.
in here, but I don't think it's really anything beyond what we've talked about already, right? It's just kind of assembling this thing together. And then assembling other stuff, so I'm very excited. Also, to be clear. Okay, so let's just stop this video over here. Stop the recording. So I'm gonna stop the share, and finally, I'm gonna